You're right. It's the CFP on the College Football Corner. Fletch and Randy. It's 12 team time. This is uncharted waters, brand new, never been done before. We'll see what it's going to be like. It's going to be fun. We're going to roll it out and talk about our reactions to the weekend in the bracket and what's coming up ahead. Right now, Randy, I know you watched some football. We talked about it a little bit before we went live. Impressions of yesterday's games and Friday, I guess.
Yeah, they were. Yesterday's games were actually really good games. I was a little surprised SMU made the run that they did and made a quite a game there. Well, I wasn't surprised at the Penn State Oregon game. That game probably went about the way I thought it would. I didn't think it'd be that high scoring, but I mean, all the games were good games, challenging games, and yeah, it's fun to watch them.
Yeah, I was happy for Boise State. They seemed like they handled business pretty good on Friday. And then, yesterday Georgia, Texas, it was a different game than the first one, but kind of same but different, back and forth, mistakes,
Hmm.
close. You didn't we're never really going to sure what's going to be going down. No beer bottles or anything, so that was a little different. But overtime, I'm thinking, oh, here we go again, Georgia. Another overtime. But they make sure they handle that one pretty quickly.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, they did.
and then excuse me, Oregon. I was a little surprised that I thought if there was going to be a close game, it'd be a low scoring game. So the
Yeah,
fact that it was a shootout, I was a little surprised that Penn State was able to score that many points on Oregon. I thought Oregon's defense was lauded to be a better defense. I'm not saying they're bad defense, but I was a little, I guess it just goes to show they all stepped up to the stage. So that was probably the one of the better outputs of offense against what is supposed to be a good defensive team, and I believe they are, for Penn State all year. They certainly didn't do that against Ohio State's defense and others as well that they played that were pretty good. I know they had a lot of points scored against USC, but USC's defense was nowhere near supposed to be as good this year,
right,
at the
right.
time. So,
Yeah,
Oregon, very efficient. At one point, I was watching that game, 7-0, 7-3, 14-3. I said, Oregon's going to run them out of the building. This thing is going to be over. And then it was 20. I think Drew out threw a pick, 21-3, and then they got a touchdown, and then they just started coming back. And then from then, they could never quite catch Oregon, but they were
no.
right on their heels, literally right up to the end practically. It was pretty impressive from a Penn State standpoint, I thought.
Yeah, like I said, we talked about that game. Oregon had the travel factor, coming to the coming to the east, not necessarily the East Coast, but coming east to play that game. And
Right.
yeah, it was all the scoring there. I was kind of surprised. Of course, I mean Penn State just friggin' ran the ball. I don't think they had very many passing yards. It looked like it was just run, run, run. And Oregon looked like Oregon. Man, they are so friggin' fast. Um,
Yes.
and there's nobody keeping up with it with those guys. It doesn't seem like so. Yeah, so then we have the top 12 teams came out. Um, Not a big surprise. Um, the one they had last week. I knew that wasn't going to hold up because they had the conference champions that were going to play, and they were ranked like 15, 16, and two of them were going to get a spot, up in the top four, and that's exactly what happened, and it bumped out Alabama and Miami and South Carolina and Ole Miss. Um, I, I I still have an issue with Indiana being in there. I mean, they do only have one loss, 106th strength of schedule in the country. They played one ranked team, and they pretty much got dominated. But it is what it is at this point. So we just have to go with it.
Yeah, I got that. We can throw it up real quick when we talk. I'm Arizona. If you look at preseason projections on who's going to be what where, nobody had Indiana on their radar for sure, except maybe Indiana fans, and I don't know if they did. New coach, new system, new everything, and they run off 11 wins, 10 in a row. As Arizona State picked dead last to be in the Big 12, now they're the Big 12 winner, and they actually got a bye over who was it? ACC, Clemson, and
Yeah.
then of course Clemson. I watched that game last night. In the first quarter, I was like, "Wow, SMU ain't getting in. They're getting boat raced, and they're going to be bounced right out of the CFP." Because I was all along had thought, if it's a decent loss, if SMU were to lose, that they should probably still get in because they would only a two-loss team, and one of them was the conference championship game, which are not supposed to count against you, but in that manner of fashion, unless of course you just get completely throttled by somebody, which has happened, but didn't really happen this year. So, Boise State's not really a surprise as far as the group of five. They're always have been one of the better group of fives the last, I'd say, 15 to 20. It goes all the way back to the BCS era that they've been a solid group of five team. So no surprise there. And maybe just a little, that they were ranked higher, so they got that bye, which is nice for them. So I'm happy for those guys. But
Yeah, the way that they have the system, Boise State and like I said, I mentioned in Indiana and Arizona State. I don't believe those teams are as good as Ole Miss, South Carolina, possibly even Alabama. But they got to put some kind of system in there. They put a lot of emphasis on that conference championship. The only thing is some of those conference championships, those conferences just aren't that strong. I mean, just got to call it like it is. But
yeah,
but they like I said, they had to do something. They're already talking about making changes for it for next year. So,
yeah. I mean, it's. I don't know what the right answer is for all that because you look at Clemson, who only lost one game in the conference all year, but they lost a big non-conference game to Georgia to open the season, got destroyed, and then they lost a real late last game of the season non-conference to an SEC team. South Carolina got beat. So
right.
it's like, what do those games mean? Versus winning your conference, and how many losses do you have? They were a 3-loss team. And that literally everybody agreed they got to win or they're not in, and they won. So it's almost like the traditionally number of years ago, the SEC East or the Big Ten West, where it's the team that team usually is. Up until Georgia got real relevant, it never really mattered who was in that side.
Mm.
Now there's no more sides. So, but then how do you handle teams in the other conferences? I mean, the Big Ten is a good conference, the second best conference. As far as depth, there's a very good high end, but everything else is nowhere near as good as the SEC in the middle, and all the lows are the same in everybody's conference for the most part. So how do you handle a team like Indiana, who's just below the top tier? They didn't play the big dogs except for Ohio State and got beat in their own conference, and their non-conference was garbage. They won them all and handled everything, and 30, 40 points a game they were winning by. Looked great, and you stacked it up against an Ole Miss. I personally think SMU, could probably look really good if not beat Alabama if they played on neutral field. I don't say the same thing about Indiana and some of those teams like an Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss would all over Indiana, So, but they're trying to balance, and how good you did, how many there really is no formula to sit there and try to computate. Hey, Alabama had this many losses, but look who they lost to, and look who those teams were, and look at Indiana, they only had this loss, and look how it went and who it was, and look at everybody else they play. It's like, you can't. At one point, you might as well just say, okay, let's just put the SEC and the Big Ten in there, and everybody else can just sit back and watch. And they can't really do that either. So it's so, I don't know how they come about all that. So I was surprised SMU got in, but I understand because they made it a close game against them, against Clemson, to squeeze in there. And I do think SMU is a good football team. I watched them. I think they look good on tape. They got a dynamic quarterback. They got some nice guys are playing, so, but how would they fare in the SEC? It's hard to tell, but they certainly wouldn't only have one loss because I don't think anybody in the SEC had one loss. So
they would definitely have more than one loss. You look at the SEC and, they do beat up on each other, and you can have that argument all day long. Looking at Alabama, they had one job to do.
Right.
win at Oklahoma. They went in there. They weren't prepared. They weren't. You could just go on and on. There's no reason for them to lose that game and then
Yeah.
be and get blown out in that game. I mean, they looked horrible. So they had those. The two bad. I wouldn't say Vandy was a bad loss. Oklahoma was a horrible loss.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If it was Vandy and Tennessee, no problem. Even if it was Vandy, Tennessee, and Georgia, then those three losses doesn't look that bad. But that whole Oklahoma thing just friggin' just killed them. And they're moving up rankings. They're up to like 9. Rolling right along. This is you got one job to do, and they weren't able. They weren't able to do it. Yeah, so I mean, there's not. I'm like you. It's hard to say what the answer is. I'm all for the conference champions getting a guaranteed spot. I don't know that I agree with them getting a top 4 spot.
Right.
I mean, you got teams that that have 3 losses. Much like the Ole Miss and the Alabama and the South Carolina and I said before, heck, man, nobody would want to play South Carolina right now.
And that's true. That is true.
So. You look at that. I don't have a problem with a guaranteed spot, but I do have a problem with them getting a guaranteed, 4 spot and getting that bye when, those are not the 4 best teams in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe they are.
Nope.
Those teams are not going to beat Ohio State. They're not going to beat, I don't know who's 6, Penn State. Probably not even going to beat Penn State or, some of them other ones in there. I mean, of course, we don't know that absolutely to be true.
If Penn State played like they did last night, they're going to look real good in this CFP. And I'm right. Well, I had the same thought that you mentioned just a little bit ago. Oregon was fast. Oregon's like SEC fast. I mean, I was like, wow, that team has got some serious speeds on both sides of the ball. And Penn State hung with them, and that's what teams are going to have to do unless Oregon beats themselves is to hang with Oregon to try to have a chance to win a game. That's why they're undefeated. Because they're really good, they're efficient. They got a good quarterback. He's throwing more touchdowns than anybody that's ever played or something like that because he's played for a million years. But he's solid. I don't think he's a pro quarterback. You never know, but I don't think he is. He's a little bit too small. He's a great college quarterback. He can run good. He can get you first downs if you need it. He's got a great arm, great presence, and they are fast, absolutely fast.
Well, and the thing about Penn State, if you look at it, the first 2 rounds of the playoff, Penn State has the easiest path, in my opinion.
Let's check that out. Keep going.
They got SMU and they got Boise State, or Boise State and SMU. Yeah, they got SMU and then Boise State in the first 2 rounds.
So they got 2 newcomers, if you will, so to speak. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they should certainly be favored in those games.
And no offense to Boise State, they pretty much need to stop Ashton Jeanty. I mean, I'm not saying Boise State can't do anything else, but that they rely on him. So if you stop him, which not very many people have, you probably have a good success against him. And I think Penn State's strength is stopping the run.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I think Penn State has the easiest path. The next team, in my opinion, would be Texas. They go
Texas or Clemson, yeah.
Yeah,
that game
Clemson,
right there.
and then they would have Arizona State.
Yep.
I would think that Texas would be favored in both of those games. So
another interesting thing is, what was the extent of Carson Beck's injury? I'm sure we don't even have any word if he'll be available getting into the first game they have, which is after the bye, because I guess he hyperextended his arm or something. It looked like the jelly bean, hanging down there. But I know, Gunnar Stockton came in and looked good for him, but they were already having quarterback problems anyways, so it does make you wonder how that looks going forward because they're going to play Notre Dame and Indiana. They're probably rooting for the Hoosiers to upset that one. But I think Notre Dame is going to be a very interesting team in this field. And, of course, Arizona State is riding a nice game-winning streak, coming out of nowhere, and they're looking good too. So very interesting. It's interesting. Texas, Ewers hasn't really played that great, in the big games, except Michigan, which I wouldn't really call it a great big game. So a lot of interesting storylines in this CFP. There's no doubt. But yeah, I believe you're right though. That Penn State and SMU path going into Boise State is gonna. That on paper seems like it's an easy path to get to the Final Four, if you will.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like I said, and Texas, the other team's got a little bit a little bit rougher way to go. But Georgia and Carson, I don't see him coming back. He could not even grip a football.
Right.
I don't see him coming back from that. Um, I don't know how bad a thing that is for Georgia, to be honest with you, because
Right.
I mean, he has not. He's had moments of, when he looks great, or even a half or a quarter or whatever, but I have not really seen him put a full game together in quite some time. I don't know if I've seen him do it this year, to be honest
Right.
with you,
Yeah.
that I can remember. So, I don't know a whole lot about the other guy, but I don't know how much that hurts Georgia. I mean, certainly I'm going to say it hurts them some, because Carson Beck has been their quarterback, been the starting quarterback the last 2 years, and we'll see how that affects him. But it ain't like he's been this marquee quarterback lighting it up,
Right.
a Heisman front runner, nothing like that. He's
No.
not. He has not been that good.
Yeah. He's had moments, like a lot of the quarterbacks that are out there right now, a lot of them, they're very flawed to a certain degree. Even if Shedeur Sanders was in this conversation, he's got great upsides, but he's got a lot of flaws too. Ward's the same way, 500 yards passing, but he's got some major times where he's not looking great, So, as far as a Heisman goes, you almost think, in my opinion, like we talked earlier a couple of weeks ago, it's still Travis Hunter's to lose, in my opinion. But
Right.
I don't know if anybody this weekend went out and grabbed it from him. That's for sure. Clemson, I think, can beat Texas. I really do. I'm not saying they're going to, but I think they can. They got a coach that's been there before. Texas has been there last year. It's just going to be.
Sarkisian's been there. I mean,
yeah,
there
he's
with Alabama. He's
yeah, exactly. So it's it's just going to be come down to and they are looking really good. Yeah, they did lose to South Carolina, but like you said, I don't know if anybody wants to. A lot of people are happy South Carolina's not in this thing, because they've been playing really well.
Right. Absolutely.
So, Oregon seems to be the team to beat, and why wouldn't they be number one and undefeated? They're going to get Tennessee or Ohio State if whoever wins that game, which is somewhat of a shame to have Ohio State and Tennessee, Ohio State and Oregon, if Ohio State wins, playing that in the next round, but it's just the way it all falls out,
Yeah, Ohio State's. I will say Ohio State's probably pretty fortunate that that's a home game for them.
Yeah,
I don't think that they would. So from what we've seen, the last game of them, I don't think that it would go well if they were in Tennessee. Hopefully that home game will help them out. We've talked about what an advantage that is. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's a rough way to go if you start out with Tennessee and then have Oregon. Regardless of who wins that first matchup. But yeah,
right.
That one's interesting. And then the very bottom of the bracket's pretty interesting.
Yeah, Indiana going to South Bend. One thing for the 4 with the bye, at least they don't have to play in somebody's backyard when they play their first game. It's going to be in neutral sites.
Right.
That'll do them favors, but it'll also do the team that they're playing. Like, who wants to go play Georgia and who wants to play in Oregon? Arizona State and Boise State, other than that blue field, probably not a big deal playing at Boise State, from a crowd standpoint, but Arizona State maybe, but it's going to be interesting. So, we got Tennessee going to Ohio State. I think that, I'm not going to sit there and say Ohio State's going to run them out of the stadium or nothing like that. Tennessee is very high powered. They got a decent defense. So Ohio State's going to have to play a great game. And I think they have and can do it. They're just going to have to do it. We'll completely just wipe out what happened with Michigan and forget about it. Now it's a new season. Everybody's 0-0, and you got first team to win 4 games, or 3 if you're one of the buys.
Yeah, that game might be a surprise, but I'm telling you right now, I don't know that Ohio State's seen a defense like Tennessee. Even Penn State and
maybe Oregon's.
Yeah, but I don't
from a speed standpoint.
Yeah, but I still don't think they've seen. I mean, you've seen that
right.
that front 7 of Tennessee is.
Oh yeah.
I mean, probably, maybe the best in the country, possibly. But yeah. So that's going to be a big challenge. But
and with the problems that Ohio State's had on the offensive line, they're going to have to come up with something. Either they fix it or they work around it. To figure out how they're going to get things, rectified there. Here we got we'll show this. This is the Jeremiah guy. Etienne was a game time decision because he has some busted up ribs, And yeah, he came in and he did pretty good, but he was big in big spots. There was no doubt, nothing probably bigger than that overtime touchdown, and it
Yeah,
was
well,
with Beck in there,
yeah, and to answer that question, Georgia has not had a good run game all year.
right?
They've been beat up with injuries and this and that. They haven't had the run game that we've seen at Georgia in the past. And we just kind of talked about Carson Beck. I don't think there's any way Carson Beck is coming back. I think he's done for the season. I would be shocked if he did come back. That was a pretty serious injury, and we talked earlier. Couldn't even grip a football. When he came out after the other guy got his head ripped off.
Yeah,
He couldn't move his arm. I mean, it's literally just dangling out his side. All he could do is take a snap and hand it off. And I'm surprised he didn't fumble it, to be honest with you. I think I'd have found somebody else to hand that ball off or went with a wildcat or something. But
well, my one thought was, do they not have a third string quarterback on their roster? I mean, that had to throw him back out there with that arm looking like that. I was thinking more of what happens if somebody lands on an arm? I mean, a further injury or whatever.
They weren't going to put him in a position where he was going to get hurt. They were just going to take a snap and hand it. But still, here he comes with that arm dangling at his side, and I'm thinking, put the running back in a wildcat, or I mean, somebody can take a snap and hand off the football. But I mean, they brought him back out and he handed the football off, and they got in the end zone. That was a heck of a game. But they've struggled with running the ball, and without Carson Beck. And we just got done talking about it. I don't know how bad that hurts him. He has not been that good this year. I mean, last year he had a pretty good season. This year, nothing like that. I mean, he went through that spurt where he threw like 14 interceptions in 5 games or something. So he hasn't been that good. So it'd be interesting to see how this affects Georgia.
Yeah. Well, they got an extra week because they're got to bye to figure out what's going on there. But they're going to bring welcoming in to whatever bowl game it is, Notre Dame and IU, the winner of that game. So they got serious issues when that game comes about. Oregon's got no issues, and I don't think Arizona State's got So that's going to be an interesting thing there if Georgia isn't able to go 100%. With what they can do on offense because they don't have their main guy pulling the trigger. Gunnar Stockton just isn't quite ready yet, which I don't know. I didn't see much of him the other night, and I know he threw a bad pick late, but I thought, boy, this is the game winner there in the Texas.
That was horrible. He actually had his stats was better than what Carson Beck was.
Right.
Excuse me. But that last throw was absolutely horrendous, and it almost cost them the game. I mean, that's what let Texas tie it up.
Well, I'll tell you what, there was a DB right next to the Texas guy who intercepted it that was so busy celebrating, he didn't turn around and block the guy that tackled the Texas guy. Had he done that, that Texas guy was probably going to the house because there was nobody there.
Maybe, but I mean, that was absolutely horrible. And I got to think that, Kirby Smart was talking to the guys, look, don't do nothing stupid, throw it away.
Right.
Yeah, he throws it right to the guy. There wasn't even a receiver nowhere close.
Yeah.
I mean, a mistake for a guy that hasn't had a whole lot of playing time. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll see how that works out for Georgia. I think it's probably going to end up working out against them with the running back issues and a quarterback issue. I mean, they always play good defense. Once again, adjustments at halftime. Kirby Smart's the absolute best. I mean, nobody can even argue that. Anybody that watches Georgia in the second half and the adjustment that they make, they're absolutely the best at it.
Oh yeah. People who were calling for Ryan Day's head, they're like, well, if you get rid of Ryan Day, who are you going to get? I'm like, well, if you got to have the best, roll out as much money as you can. See if Kirby Smart will take a Brinks truck. He probably ain't going anywhere, but there are people that can't do it, And, right. and he, I mean, I watched that game last night. I'm like, I think he's the best coach in the game right now that I can see. Literally, because it's almost like because of him, you can give them a chance to win every game, no matter how bad things are going. Because he's that good of a coach.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, it'll be pretty interesting. I mean, there's some guys out there coaching. I mean, Kirby Smart seems to seems to have it going on. Kind of like a Nick Saban kind of guy. Surround yourself with good people, but he is a defensive guy.
Right.
Nick Saban was originally a defensive guy. Kirby Smart's probably one of the best defensive guys around. You look at Oklahoma with Brent Venables, definitely a defensive guy. He needs to find an offensive guy to fit into that.
Yeah,
but
no doubt.
His game plan for Alabama was, we got 3 spies on Monroe. If he can throw the ball, they'll just run us out of the stadium. Well, guess what? Great defensive call, because they shut him down. And
yeah, I think you would agree. And I'm not saying this is my statement; it's just a sentiment. If Alabama doesn't lose that game, especially how they lost the game against Oklahoma, I mean, it's one thing they lost the game; they got destroyed. If it was a field goal game or whatever, and I think Alabama's in the CFP. That the other games they lost were Vanderbilt had a great year for Vanderbilt, so that wasn't a bad loss. It looked ugly at the time because nobody knew what that Vanderbilt was going to be.
Excuse me, man.
Right, nobody knew Vanderbilt was going to be what they ended up becoming, a bowl team. And then of course the was it the Ole Miss that beat Alabama beat Ole Miss. Tennessee,
Ole Miss and Alabama did not play. Alabama got beat by Tennessee.
Tennessee. That's right.
Fairly close game, but it was that. I said it was. I mean, they were up to like 9 in all the polls and everything.
Right.
And that just put them out. I mean,
so they don't lose that game, and then there's no concontroversy.
They're 8-9, and they're in the playoffs. There's not a question. There's not there's not nothing. But it didn't happen. So
yeah. So I certainly would say, if you look at this bracket, if you say, okay, we got back and forth. If we got Alabama instead of SMU, if we have Ole Miss instead of
Indiana,
Clemson, and then Indiana, Clemson's but regardless of the fact that they won the division, and then Indiana, if you have an Ole Miss or even a South Carolina, this is a completely different bracket, and especially because South Carolina and even Florida, although they were way too far to get in there, South Carolina, Florida were playing some of the best football in the last few weeks. South Carolina was really playing good, and then with I don't know, it's just it's just the way it is, I guess. And I guess the best thing about something like this is this is going to make them try to add more teams in a couple. This will go for 2 years, and then they can revisit it again because the contract runs out in 2 years. This expansion happened 2 years early than the contract extended. So with this, something like this is going to almost guarantee we're going to get 14 or 16 teams. Who knows?
Well, like I said, I just think that like I said earlier, I just think they got to, I mean, if 12 teams is fine, but I think they need to look at how they're ranking them. You got those top 4, and with a couple of teams that are not top 4 teams in the country. And I know that's not what the rules say. The rules say a conference champion is going to get these spots, and that's exactly what happened. I don't know how good that is for college football. I mean, you just now gave a scenario where everybody in the world would want to see those games.
Oh yeah.
If it was South Carolina and Ole Miss, so I don't know how that's going to affect, and we may be surprised. Those teams may step up and really surprise us and have a great showing. So I mean, that's always out there and always a possibility. But I would certainly be surprised.
And certainly there's a ton of parity in football. There's no doubt. There's a lot of great players and a lot of great teams and all over, and it's getting more parity with the NIL and everything else. So there's no doubt about that. But I think what you were saying is absolutely a must. If you are not one of the top 4 teams on the rankings and you win your conference, you need to fall in where your number is. And if you're outside of the top 12, then because we only got 12 teams, then you come in at the back end of the 12.
Right. Yeah,
because you're a conference winner. You're guaranteed in, but you're in the back end of the 12. And don't steal somebody's seed that earned it because you didn't play a great schedule, but you got in because you won your conference. So that makes a lot more sense to me. Yeah. And maybe even getting rid of the buys by adding a couple more teams, and maybe having the first 2 rounds be home games. One thing I'm really excited about, irregardless that one's in Columbus, just in general, home home game playoffs in the college football, I think, is going to be huge. Beaver Valley is going to be crazy. Happy Valley, the Beaver Stadium.
Oh man, can you
crazy
imagine?
up there. Probably crazy in Notre Dame, because those fans are pretty passionate. Crazy in Columbus, crazy in what's the other one here? Texas will be nuts. And
Nah,
then
Texas is not a. I mean,
well,
they can get
for the playoff game they will be.
The only thing that Texas is going to do is have that goofy guy that wears the cowboy hat that they show every 10 minutes. I got sick of looking at him, whoever he is. But anyways, yeah.
But and if the Ohio State and Tennessee was flipped, Neyland Stadium's another place that goes nuts, and for Tennessee, Knoxville. So there's a lot. So if you had a South Carolina in there, there's a lot of great atmospheres in college football, and I think that's so much better than pro football. You just don't have that in pro football like you do in college. So I'm excited about that, and I think those numbers are going to be huge. And then maybe when they change this again, get at least, I wouldn't mind seeing all the way up to the Final Four or the final game be home games for these campuses. I don't know how that all works out, and all the logistics is. I know some of these stadiums aren't meant to be done in super cold weather, whatever some of them are, who knows, but get it done and whatever you got to do to make it work, because the home atmosphere, the fans will come out in droves. They come out all year anyways on these tailgating.
Well,
they're going to come out for this stuff for sure.
Some teams, they just travel well. Alabama travels well. Ohio State travels well.
Right.
You got these teams that travel well. And the one thing about, even when they had a 4-team playoff, having a neutral site gave you more of, okay, who's better? Here we are at a neutral site. Who's better? Is it Ohio State or is it, Notre Dame? Whoever happened to be playing. Whereas, if it was a home game, when it got down to the finals, it's just that we've talked about it being a huge advantage all season.
Oh yeah.
So then you could have, well, if we get an upset, you could have I'm just going to make this up. You could have a 3-loss team, getting a home game in the semifinals. And, that's why I think the whole neutral site thing, comes into play whenever you get down to that final, whatever it's going to be. What's it going to be, the final? Well, it'll end up being Final Four eventually. But prior to that, what do you got? I guess you'll have the final 8, right?
Yeah, basically after the first round, you have 8 teams, and those are all neutral site from there on in. Yeah. I think at least that after the first round here, the second round, which is final 8, if that was home games, I think that would work. And then you could do bowl games for the Final Four, the Final 2, and the Final Four and the final championship game. But I mean, because the one thing, like from a college basketball standpoint, you see, and this is a totally different animal, but you see those first round games, those stadiums are empty, because you got Duke playing out in Seattle, or you got, so you hate to see that stuff, So if they, kept it more, even maybe neutral site, but regionalized. So you got 2 teams in a region that are going to play in a stadium that people can get to, versus, like you said, Alabama, Ohio State, even Penn State, fans travel, but maybe some other schools. Like I remember when Ohio State played Miami way back in the BCS and Fiesta Bowl, that was like 75% Ohio State fans, because the Miami fans just don't travel, they just never have. So that try to avoid that would be good, by regionalizing it at least, to keep it to where it's fans can get there, so. But yeah, either way, those first games are going to be exciting to watch. Atmosphere is like crazy, and if anybody can win a road game in some of those stadiums, especially like Beaver Stadium, like we mentioned, or maybe in Columbus and Notre Dame, Texas. Well, I mean, that'd be a good road win.
Yeah, and I was going to say this earlier in that Ohio State Tennessee game. Now, I mean, you would automatically think that Ohio State would run that stadium and be absolutely, but I'll tell you right now, Tennessee will show up.
Oh yeah,
and their fans will show up. I mean, you look in Ohio. I'll compare this. When you're in Ohio, you have you got the Bengals and the Browns, and you have this huge following of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep.
And and I've gone to a game and there was more Steeler fans there than there was Bengal fans. I mean that's
so the Bengals is so long.
In Ohio, there is a tremendous amount of Tennessee fans.
Oh yeah, and Kentucky.
A tremendous amount. Yeah,
yep.
I think that they all came up here when to get jobs way back when, and most of their families was kind Kentucky, Tennessee, all that kind of stuff. But I think Tennessee is going to have a pretty good following coming into
there's no doubt. I mean,
Columbus.
yeah, it's not far at all. And Tennessee will travel, and it's not far at all. So there's no doubt that'll be, and there's a ton of Tennessee people. If you watch college basketball, there's a ton of UK people in Ohio. And yes, Pittsburgh Steelers. They've reaped the benefits for so many decades of the Bengals being so bad that the Bengals fans sell their tickets to the Steelers. Like you said, there used to be more Steeler fans at the game than there were Bengals fans. Absolutely.
Well, I'm amazed. Even people I know, good friends of mine and stuff that are Steelers fans, and I'm like, well, you got the Browns and the Bengals here, but that they're Steeler fans, and the same thing. I work with people. There's probably as many Tennessee fans as there is Ohio State fans at our bus garage.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's pretty good. There's a lot. Maybe not as many, but there's a lot. So there's a big following for them. So that game will be that game will be a little bit interesting. But I don't think it's going to be like Penn State. A whiteout or whatever. The places that would be absolutely crazy to play in these would be Oregon, Penn State, which they have a home game.
Oh yeah.
Tennessee, which they have to travel. The other, I don't see the other games being a major significance of, man, we can't hear, we can't.
Well, when Indiana came to Ohio State Big Noon a couple weeks ago. The crowd was bothering them. They had to go to a silent count because they couldn't hear the claps. I mean, so it was loud. And this being CFP first thing, night games, I think all the home games are going to be as crazy as they could ever be. There's no doubt. So, but it'll remain to be seen. Obviously, best way to get a crowd out of a game is to score some points early, have some defensive shutdown. So, whether it stays that way on any of those places remain to be seen by who they're playing. I definitely think. If you look at the first round matchups, I think honestly, I think Ohio State, Tennessee, as way as it should be, because it's an 8 and a 9, is probably the most hotly contested game. It'd be a little bit of a surprise if Clemson was able to beat Texas. Not a crazy surprise, but a little bit. I think SMU beating up Penn State would potentially be a little surprise on the road.
On the road.
Indiana, Notre Dame. Not a crazy surprise, but at the same time, that'd be a great win for Indiana because that would finally show everybody they can beat somebody big because they haven't really played anybody except Ohio State. And Notre Dame's had a nice season all the way along, except for NIU, which they basically wiped that pretty much clean with the rest of their season and stuff. So Ohio State, Tennessee, I think is probably the biggest game of the weekend. The first round, and it can go either way, and it could come down to who's making mistakes, who's shooting themselves in the foot or whatever, because, young, great coach in Tennessee, Heupel, young coach in Ohio State's Ryan Day. Both of them have big wins. Ryan Day's been around a few more years than Heupel has, but they're both out there to prove that they are ready to make a jump and get into big-time wins. And, and like you said, Tennessee's defense is for real. I mean, there was, 4 or 5 weeks ago at the most, I was hearing people on the radio, college stations on satellite saying Tennessee's for real. They're probably one of the best teams, and they're not. They're really good. They do have a great defense. The SA's played bad at times, but who hasn't? But that doesn't mean they're going to play bad that weekend. Here we go. Well, man, this thing just is so. Here we go, right here. So Jeremiah wants to. In Tennessee, they run a quick no huddle offense. Ohio State struggled against the no huddle. It'll be a good game for sure, but OSU needs to get their O-line figured. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can't, we talk about it all the time. If you can't control the line of scrimmage, you're going to have a long day on either side of the ball. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, Tennessee's, and then we talked about Tennessee's, front seven. They're one of the best in the country. So, and I seen he's talking about Tennessee, how fast the offense they run. Tennessee and Ole Miss. They run a play like every 7 seconds. I mean, something ridiculous. 9 seconds, whatever it is. They run a play that quick. So,
right.
It's hard for you to get people on and off the field, and unless they make a substitute, which they don't when they're running a play every 9 seconds or whatever that outrageous number is. And absolutely right. Those Tennessee, I mean, they keep it rolling.
And I think based on who's in the bracket, the 12-team playoff, Ryan Day might be the only guy that if he doesn't win his first game, he might be looking for a job. It might. I mean,
Well,
if they're blown out of their own stadium, it's not going to be good for him.
I mean, we know what happened last game there, so I mean,
That's
not things aren't going really well for him right now. I mean, this is his chance at some redemption to probably.
I mean, had they blown Michigan out, then I think if they get blown out in their first CFP game, people are. But now that they've lost Michigan, this first CFP game, they got to win it. If they lose it, it's got to be. I don't know. I don't know how they can survive. They've already survived so many close losses, so losing just isn't going to help him out at all. So if they get blown out, he might as well not even go back to the stadium, in my opinion. I'm not saying I want him fired. I'm saying I think that's what they're going to do.
I don't even think they have to get blown out. His record against the teams haven't been so well. You got that big 0-4 against Michigan. That's the big thing. I mean, that is the big picture right there. I mean, I know how important this playoff is and everything, and Ohio State winning can certainly help him out and help Ohio State out, right. Obviously. But that 0-4 against a Michigan team, especially this year, when Ohio State was clearly, on paper and everything else, a superior team, and I believe that they were.
They just laid an egg, and I believe from the coaching all the way down, the egg was laid. There was a horrible game plan. The quarterback played his worst game. The defense, defense kept them in the game. That's about the only thing they did good was they kept the game close. But they threw a pick and set them up on the 2-yard line, which is the only touchdown Michigan got. I mean, it was gift wrapped, and they still couldn't put it through. So, if they can turn that into motivation, but whether they do that or not, who knows?
I've heard people say that. Fire Randy on the field, everything. I couldn't.
Feinbaum.
Well, I mean, I think Paul Feinbaum is an idiot, but he might be right in this case, actually. But
if I was Ryan Day, honestly, I know I'm not. If I'm in this situation and I lose that game, I just resign. So don't even worry about it. You don't want. I'll save you the problem and the headache. I'm gone.
There's. People say, well, now they're motivated. Now they're this, now they're that. And I'm just like, stop.
Right.
If you cannot be motivated, and one of the biggest rivalries, clearly the top 2 rivalries in the country, if you can't be motivated and prepared for that game, then I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
I don't think a playoff game is going to make that big difference. And I don't know if he actually said this or not, but I had read an article where Ryan Day said we were looking forward to the playoffs. Well, that's about the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I didn't see her that. And if they were doing that, he is an idiot, sir. If that's what they're thinking.
I doubt that he even said it, but
Right.
I think it was on Facebook, so I know it's true.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's you do have to take your rival seriously, and
biggest game in the friggin' country, man. I mean, the Iron Bowl and Michigan, Ohio State are the 2 biggest rivalry games in the friggin' country. Bar none. Those are the top 2.
Yep.
If you can't get up for that, then you
got
problems.
And that one has been under the spotlight because of going 0-4 the last 4 years against them. He did win the very first one against them in 2019, and then Michigan did not play in 2020 because of COVID. They said they were too sick, even though they had to practice.
That's the whole COVID thing.
But 0-4 is 0-4, and then here comes the game. This is a redemption game. You load up the roster with $20 million in IL. You pick up the best safety from last year, Alabama's crazy outstanding freshman. You get a quarterback who has had a great year, and you go out and do that. There's just no excuse. You just absolutely laid the biggest egg, and that's nobody cares if all the other games. 7 teams planted flags that weekend.
Man,
and the only team they talked about was Ohio State, Michigan. 17 or 7 teams planted flags. Rivalry. It didn't matter. It was all Ohio State, Michigan was the biggest, especially because they had no business winning that game. and Michigan won that game. So
Yeah.
they got to put up. If they
Well,
don't, then it's just the biggest joke of them why they ever came back. And when Jack Sawyer picked that off on the goal line, I thought this is it. And then they couldn't do anything with it, and it's so hilarious. How bad
end
they
up giving
got.
it right back to them. But
Yeah.
anyways, that's yeah. Man, sorry about this cough. I can't shake it.
We're the Coffin Brothers today.
Yeah.
I'm coughing like crazy. It's interesting. I want to look at this one more time. I looking ahead or looking at the CFP. I don't really see,
Jeez.
Franklin getting in there. I don't think he is under a hot seat to win his game. I don't think anybody's job's really in jeopardy in this field at 12 except Ryan Day. The Arizona State, they're probably going to give him a key to the city. He's a brand new coach, and they're in it. And Kirby Smart's in it till he wants to be. Everybody else in there, they're all Signetti, first year. Notre Dame, they're flying high, and so nobody hates that. Their coach, So yeah, it's Ryan Day is the only one with a major league chip on his shoulder. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, especially the way that last one went. But can't say there was any surprises in the 12-team playoff. So be looking forward to watching those games. Hopefully they're all competitive. I hope that the feeling I have that some of those games are not going to go so well with the teams that made it. We don't know that. That's going to kind of give the whole 12-team playoff thing kind of a black eye. Because we talked about it earlier how man, there could really be some premier matchups here. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And I'm not downplaying any of those teams. They certainly took care of business, and they're there because they did take care of business. Where other teams did not. So I'm certainly this is a chance for them. So how they step up and how they perform is going to be interesting.
Yeah, don't want to forget to put this up. I just saw this from Jeremiah. What adjustments did Knowles make? I don't know if Knowles really needed to make a whole lot of adjustments. Their defense played great. They lost 13-10. So he didn't really need to make adjustments. Chip Kelly, I don't know. The only adjustment it was an A gap or the B gap. Everything went right at the middle, which was the strength of their defense, which was really not smart. Why Day micromanaging his coordinators and not allowing them to make those adjustments. Players still have to execute, and they do, but it's the play calling was weird. The execution was even worse. And, one thing I saw, which made a lot of sense, was the strength of Ohio State's offense is was before either the tackles, the wide receivers, and the running backs. The weakest part of their offense was the center and the two guards because their center blew his Achilles, and the guards had moved out the tackles to cover the tackles going down. So that was the weakest part. And the strength of Michigan's defense was the two tackles in the middle. And what did they do 16 times for 0 or no gain? Ran right up the middle.
Well, I mean, Jeremiah's got a really good point. I mean, it does come down to the coaches, and they do got to be held accountable. Yep. And it's also true that it's up to players to execute the play that it's designed to do to be successful. But I mean, it does. One thing, being an Alabama fan, I always go back, anytime Alabama got beat, what was the first thing you heard Nick Saban say? This is on me.
Yep.
This is on me. You see, I mean, some coaches still do that and still say that, but like Jeremiah was saying, I mean, they have to be accountable. Ryan Day is he's the guy.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's micromanaging them. He may be. I don't know what goes on behind closed doors there.
Yeah.
But I mean, he brought in top guys to do this. Chip Kelly, a very well known, awesome offensive guy, and Knowles a defensive guy. You would think that he would let them do their job,
right?
But I mean, there would have to come a point as the season went on where, he's got to say, "Hey guys, hang on a minute here. Something ain't working here. We need to change things up. Maybe it's not working because of the personnel we have. Maybe it's not working because you were once good, now you're an idiot. I mean, who knows what's going on? But it does come down. I mean, the coaches got to be held accountable, and it goes right to the top.
Right. Oh yeah, and those were definitely two of the toughest tackles that Ohio State had seen the whole year. Those dudes are going to the NFL. Those guys in the middle on the Michigan's defense, they were there last year when they were a lot better, obviously. So Howard's pick that was almost a pick six, but it went into for a touchdown 2 plays later. Was that a blown assignment? Was that a blown assignment? Was it a blown read? He threw a pick much like that against Penn State that went to for a touchdown. So was that a great call and a horrible execution, or was that a really bad call? Because it wasn't the outside. It's just hard to tell. We're not in there. We don't know what they're seeing scheme wise. I know Howard's not a top guy. He's a very good guy that can throw short, medium range passes and some deep, and he can get you some runs. But there was a lot of times where much when that game had got going, it was just evident they can't block the front seven. So if they play that good, then Tennessee's going to eat them up. They got to figure something out.
I'm just sitting here shaking my head because you're telling me that Michigan guys ate them up.
Right.
I hate to tell you what's coming.
Oh yeah,
You better be making some adjustments and making some changes. That's and going back, we've talked a whole lot about Ohio State here and what's been going on there and all that kind of stuff. And then the whole Georgia situation with the quarterback and all that. Right. I tell you another place that is starting to catch a lot of flack from the media, from the fans, and everything else is Texas. You got Quinn Ewers there, and he's done well. He hasn't done this year what people expected. Now he has been injured. He's had that foot injury, and he missed a couple games earlier in the season where he was out. People are screaming for Arch Manning. And so, does that come into play if their offense keeps staying stagnant like it was? They basically got off to an okay start, and then they had nothing. Absolutely nothing. And they brought Manning in a couple of times in, a trick play, a running play. So, at what point? And I think Sark's a very, once again, he. A very good offensive guy, certainly puts a very good game plan together. So that's something else to watch is if Texas doesn't get off to a good start again, should they make a change at quarterback? Maybe that's something they should look at. But, those guys know a whole lot more than we. No, they don't know more than we do. We know more than anybody. But they know the situation there much more than they do. But I think that's possibly something that they're going to have to look at.
Yeah, Jeremiah threw in about it. It was just great film study by the team at North DBs. I would say maybe or maybe not, only because their best DB wasn't even in the game. He was hurt. And their secondary is supposed to be their weakest part. Doesn't mean they're horrible. It just means they're not as good as their tackles and all that. No big deal. That one pick that almost went for a pick six, that ended up being in the end zone 2 plays later. That I don't know if Tate didn't make the right cut or didn't make the right read, or it's just hard to say. But it's a pick's a bad pick. But getting back to what you're saying about Texas, I think Texas's best win was against Vanderbilt statistically, I guess, because Michigan was nowhere near as good as Vanderbilt, in the rankings and all that. They played Georgia twice. They lost both games. Obviously, last night's game was a lot closer. Yesterday's game was closer than the first one they played. So yours, like you said, he is not, dynamically running. I don't know if Arch can do it. They brought Arch in that first game, and he didn't do a whole lot better than it. Their offense looked like it's susceptible sometimes to defenses that know how to get in the backfield. So that I don't think Clemson has that type of defense. I think they've had it in the past. I don't think they have it now. So I wouldn't think Texas would have much of a problem getting by Clemson, barring, weird things happening, flukes, plays, and turnovers, and shoot yourselves in the foot or whatever. And then they win that. They got Arizona State. Now, and I couldn't tell you a thing about Arizona State other than they're not supposed to be where they were preseason-wise, but they ended up.
They put up some numbers.
Oh, yes, they did. Yeah, the 45 points against who did they play in their championship game? Iowa State. You
Yeah,
know, so
they lit them up.
yeah, they that was the only blowout really. So I don't know what to expect of Arizona State's defense coming out of the Big 12 against an SEC team.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So
Well-
Texas might, if they don't have any problem with Clemson, they may not have all that much trouble getting into the Final Four.
Well,
you never know.
Clemson does have a pretty good defense. I mean, Clemson's defense is pretty good. They've always had a good defense. I think the more thing for Clemson is offensive side of the ball. Again, you got a guy that's been probably more consistent than the other guys that we've talked about in that Kubiak or whatever.
Klubnik.
Yeah.
Kate Klubnik. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
he's played nice.
Yeah, a little bit more consistent than a Beck or a Ewers has played. So, their thing, struggling the same way that Georgia has with their running game and all that stuff, which is kind of odd because Clemson and Georgia both have always been known for their running game, and they've just because of injuries or whatever, they just have not had that this year. So, yeah, that'll be. I look for it to be a competitive game. But so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Clemson's a pushover or anything. No doubt. But we'll just see. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it because at this point, I can't tell you who I think is going to win any of those first four games without a doubt. Ohio State, Tennessee, Texas, Clemson, SMU, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Indiana.
I can tell you. I can tell you who's going to win every one of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, pull it up there. I'll tell you exactly.
Here we go.
Okay.
Notre Dame, Indiana.
Notre Dame, Indiana. Notre Dame's going to win that game.
Okay. You got a score?
You
don't have to have a score.
I don't know. I think they're going to win fairly easily. I don't think it's going to be all that close. Then we go to Penn State and SMU. Penn State at home. Penn State's going to win that game by 10. And then we have Texas and Clemson. That game's actually going to be a pretty close game. I'm going to say 31-27 Texas. And then you have Ohio State, Tennessee. And I am going to say Tennessee 28, Ohio State 21.
All right. You guys heard it here first.
Yeah.
Go to Vegas with those numbers. First. Get on your DraftKings or your FanDuel, whatever, and put them Vegas in there. And if you win anything, you got to buy Randy a burger.
That's right. I mean, bet big money, or better yet, send the money to me, and I will bet it for you. Maybe.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So it's been about an hour. That's a good hour's worth. And we'll definitely do one. We got 2 weeks until these games happen. So we'll do one after the games. Talk about what happened and looking at the next round. We'll opposite what we normally do. We will be doing post-game stuff probably the next day or so. So I think it's the 20th and the 21st are all the games for the first round. So and they're all going to be at night, I believe, or at least one. I don't know how they all lay out. I haven't seen the schedule yet, but pretty sure I saw Ohio State's playing on the Saturday. So I don't know who's playing that Friday night. So
I hate those late games. They get over with at midnight or 12:30 in the morning. Oh, geez, crazy.
Yeah, well, I think all these are in this time zone, though. Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, and Texas is in the Central Time Zone, so shouldn't be too bad for those first four games.
Well, if it's a 7 or 8 o'clock game, it's going to go late because of commercials.
Well, yeah, but it won't be 4 in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it might be,
unless it's 8 overtimes.
Yeah, there you go.
So enjoy them. Thanks, Jeremiah, for all the input. We love it, man. Love your insight. Appreciate it very much. Hope you stick with us. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell your enemies. Give us join into the chat. We'll look for us after the first round of the 12-team playoff. And until then, subscribe. Give us a like on Facebook. On the subscribe and the bell on YouTube. And so you keep up everything what's happening right here on the corner on the Fletch Entertainment Network. Until then, have a great week.
Yes.